Audi
is a progressive mark, and we have the motto Vorsprung durch Technik for a reason. It means we're also progressive where communication is concerned, and we don't rely on the classic media. Instead, we travel increasingly through other worlds. Around 600 million people worldwide travel through virtual worlds, and this potential must not, of course, be lost.
Dieses Potenzial natürlich auch nicht verloren gehen darf.
Although there have been a number of high-profile virtual worlds in existence before, home is the first time that a platform holder such as Sony has actually created one of their own. Probably the first environment where brands can truly sort of innovate within a gaming audience. So it's not required that the brand has to make a standalone video game. It could be part of a fabric that games players go and visit on a daily basis.
Home is a 3D world that looks extremely attractive on the PlayStation 3 as hardware or basic equipment, and that also makes it different from other worlds.
Differenziert sie sich auch von anderen virtuellen Welten.
Home is totally free, and to date over 12 million people have downloaded the space and gone into Home. So you've got a great accessibility for the audience there.
When we first started talking with Audi about how to build a virtual world, we started talking about an idea of Audi Heaven, a place that you would go that would represent the brand, but it would do so in a very emotive way.
We ultimately said to ourselves, OK, we'll take a closer look at these concepts, actually what Audi represents for us, and we also looked for images to go with those concepts. It was Ullmann Sattler Wapner, our architects, who developed the basic concept for the virtual world.
Came up with a concept that was based on designing a vertical space.
Below, the city pulsating and dynamic. It's more reminiscent of utopian town models in a way. Metropolis, Blade Runner.
Metropolis, Blade Runner.
And it was very much a kind of high-rise environment, and that the Audi terminal itself would sit kind of at a midpoint within this vertical space. But beyond that would be these apartments that would be the sort of aspirational idea behind Audi.
Yes, very ephemeral, very shiny and very heavenly.
Sehr himmlisch.
This idea of a transcendental space was important. When you look up into the environment, you can see the apartments beyond. You know, you're asking yourself, how do I get there? How do I achieve or reach that sort of goal? And yet there is a plane that they can get to, and that plane is the Audi.
Go.
Vimy, as far as creative things in relation to playing was concerned, was the partner who was able to contribute the most.
When we sat down with the architects in the first instance, some of the concept work that we talked about featured a short clip from the really fantastic commercial in which the Audi drives up the ski ramp.
Well, why do people play computer games? In over 90% of cases, I believe it's because you can do things which you can't do in the normal world. Everyone's familiar with the ski ramp, and who wouldn't enjoy driving up it?
But we want to, we're games makers, so we're not going to just have a car drive up a ski ramp. We're going to drive it through a floating track in the middle of a city and then fire it into space. That's the way that we would approach things.
In real life, the car always lands, but in our world, it just gets higher and higher.
In the development of the Audi space, and especially in the game Audi Vertical Run, we immediately thought of the R8. During the course of development, the Audi e-tron was presented at the IAA car show in Frankfurt in September 2009.
When it was first discussed that we would use the e-tron as the car that was going to be racing on the track, we just felt this was the perfect mix. I mean, here we are in a city that's, not quite the future, but is clearly sort of beyond the construction techniques of man today. And the e-tron seemed to have that futuristic element as well. So when we put the two things together, put the e-tron into this, hanging track in space, it just made perfect sense that it would then accelerate into a brighter future.
Sound is of course important as well in a virtual world, so our main task was how to get the sound transformed into a typical Audi without things getting boring. Fortunately, Audi has its own Audi corporate sound design team, who have a lot of very different sounds, all the way to entire music scores. We wanted the concept to be very individual. In other words, we created special Audi instruments, which were A, electronic, and B, related to the human body. That's to say, heartbeat, breathing, etc. Then we designed the whole concept in such a way that every visitor and every player creates their own different and individual sound image, depending on the state of play.
It's an interactive 3D space that the user will move between. Certain areas will trigger different sounds. So you'll have drums on one side, some piano on the other, and as they move back and forward, they control the amount of drums or piano that comes into the audio soundtrack.
And when I move towards certain points in space, I then have the entire track.
To date, the Audi Space has been a phenomenal success. We've had over 300,000 visitors in the first few weeks of launch. We've just had over 1 million plays of the Vertical Run game. So we're pretty convinced that people think that Audi have a place inside this virtual world, and it's something that they seem to want to come back to time and time again.
It's great to have that kind of confirmation, but we know we mustn't rest on our laurels. This year we're going to be doing a lot more things in home. It wasn't long ago that we unveiled the Audi A1 in home. There'll be a mini game to go with it, and we'll be introducing presentations in PlayStation Home as well.
So we see the virtual world and the Audi Space and Home as being completely intermeshed with the existing marketing campaigns that are ongoing. We become an extension of those existing marketing pieces.
The Audi Space in PlayStation Home won't of course be the only thing we're transferring to new media. In the future, Audi will probably be encountered in lots of other places too. Surprising in communication and progressive where Audi isn't what you'd immediately expect.